broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our May California Brokers Business Accelerator on real estate objection handling, hosted by our Central California broker, Jeff Green, but also featuring insight from a panelist of brokers, including Omar Hellman, Thomas Bullock, and Stephen Rowe. I wanted to take a quick minute to let you all know about some recent changes that have been made. We are happy to welcome our newest broker, Stephen Rowe, to the team. We have gone ahead and split the Northern California region into two parts, Northern and Central. Jeff Green is now overseeing Central California, and Stephen is overseeing Northern California. We are very excited to have Stephen a part of the team. Jeff and Stephen will be traveling the Northern California area to meet all of our Northern California agents. On May 22nd, Jeff and Stephen will be in Sacramento at 10 a.m. at Insight Coffee Roasters in the pavilions. They will also be in Truckee at 2 p.m. at 10120 Coffee Bar. Please be on the lookout for an email with further details on this. With that being said, I would now like to pass it over to our wonderful brokers, starting with Jeff Green. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. Good to be here with everybody, and this is going to be a great opportunity. Let me make sure I've got the right screen here, because I do have three screens. Let's see. Tell me if you're seeing Allison James Estates and Homes on there.
I see your desktop right now.
You're seeing my desktop? Okay. Let me just go ahead and redo that. I apologize. Bear with us, folks. Oh, there I am popping up as a, that's not. Here, I'm just going to move this over 1 second. Do you see that this screen here? Is this the one you're seeing? Or I'm moving this?
I'm actually not seeing one now.
Okay, all right. Give me just one moment. How about that? Can you see the presentation now?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay, what do you see now?
Your desktop.
How about now? Is that the presentation?
Oh, I saw it start moving over.
Over here?
Yep, there you go.
Okay. All right, so I have three screens, and they're really handy when you're doing a lot of desktop work. So when you're doing a webinar, not so much, because sometimes you can't find where you are, but I've got the screen here. So today we're going to talk about objection handling, and the title is I can handle any objection, and so can you. Now, let me be first off to say that that's not a cocky statement or arrogant or anything like that, or I'm slick and I can get one over on somebody. It has nothing to do with that. If that's an agent's mindset on objections, then you're in the wrong business and you don't understand fiduciary care. What we're going to talk about today is how to understand what an objection is, how to decode the true intent of what's going on in the mind of the client or the prospect, and be able to answer it with some reasonable intelligence and care for the person that you're dealing with. So let's go ahead and give you one more important thing that we want you to do. If you have any objections that you're facing, anything that's challenged you, anything that you just haven't had an answer for and you've been stumped, I'd like you to go ahead and type it into the chat section of the webinar. That way, when we get to the end of the webinar, it'll already be there and we won't have to ask you for it and wait for you to type it in. I mean, if we get to the end and you think of something else, feel free to go ahead and type it, but go ahead and start typing any objections you have. We're going to deal with them. We're going to use our brain trust of brokers here, and it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. So, all right. So first of all, you need to know what an objection is. An objection is simply an unanswered question in the mind of a prospect or a lead, And an objection can be a statement or a question. It could be something like, I had a buyer I was showing houses to recently, and they said, I think we're about to see prices go down. And the question is, why should I really be paying all this money for this house? And obviously we know the answer to that. The market's in that particular area, the market's going up dramatically. Another example is you do a CMA, house is worth 400,000. They say, well, I think my house is worth 550. You know, they don't know. The real question that they have is, how do you really know what a house is worth in today's market? Or how did you come up with your answer? So understand the real question. When a lead or client makes a statement, that may not be the real question. So here's a common one. You meet somebody, they're wanting to look at property. You ask them, you know, do you have a relationship with a loan officer? Have you spoken to a lender? And they say, my finances will be no problem when buying a house. And the real question behind that is, most likely, why does the lender need my financial information now? Why can't I handle it later? You know, a lot of people think that applying for home loans like applying for a car loan, which you can do online in 5 minutes and get a full approval and go buy a $60,000, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 car if you can qualify. It's very quick. Another statement is, I only want to pay 4% commission. The real question is, what value do you add, and why should I pay you more than the discount broker down the street? So they make a statement, and what happens with a lot of agents is they can consider that the end of the conversation. And we're going to talk about how to transition out of a statement like that. Another one is, I want to offer $30,000 below the list price. And the real question is, what's a good deal on a house in today's market? And am I going to miss out by offering too low? Something we can talk about in just a moment. So answer questions with the client or the lead's best interest in mind. It's not just to pursue a sale at no cost or at any cost. You have a fiduciary duty to look out for your client's best interest. And this includes advising them to do things that they don't want to do. It might be a very common scenario we have is people, they're behind the times on how fast the market is. I have areas in my market that are, the average list price to sale price is well over 100%. The average per month of inventory, we have less than a month of inventory. And so I mentioned the example of people wanting to lowball on markets that are definitely a seller's market. And a good question to say to them is, can I tell you why blank, whatever they state, may not be in your best interest? Or you can even precede that by a statement such as, hey, I appreciate what you're saying. What I hear you saying is this. You know, repeat to them what they're saying. You know, you only want to offer $550 on this house. It's listed at $600. That's what I'm hearing you say, right? So we repeat and say, I understand that's a valid position, a valid concern, but can I tell you why that may not be in your best interest? And so what that does, that opens up the discussion for you to demonstrate to them why something may not be in their best interest. Explain using verifiable information from third parties if possible. Whenever I deal with the price objection or the listing price objection or the purchase price objection, I always have MLS data handy, and I have it in graphical format. So the process is quite simple. This is a really short explanation of how to handle this, and I want to throw this open to any advice from any of the brokers, and I want to find out, do we have any specific objections? You might have come here thinking this is going to be a longer presentation, but the summary of this is very simple. Understand what's going on in the prospect's mind, answer them from a fiduciary perspective, looking out for their best interests, and be able to communicate rationally without emotions and falling down into the level of argumentation. So I want to know, do we have any questions or objections coming up? And do we have any statements from our brokers to kind of provide a little background on our discussion that we're going to have in just a minute? Anybody have any other thoughts on objection handling?
Jeff, I'll jump in here. I think it's very, very important for every agent to have a base knowledge and a presentation. When you go into a listing presentation or a buyer's presentation, you can anticipate what some of the questions may be. And you need to have a prepared answer and statement to respond to those type of objections. You don't want to do a canned presentation. You want to do a planned presentation. But knowledge is important. So if you anticipate they're going to question you on the amount of commission you're charging, or if they're going to question you about how much should I offer on this property, as Jeff alluded to earlier, if you can get third-party type of information that you can quote and talk about, that will go a long ways. Read your local newspaper every morning. Find out if there's any information in that newspaper or either the actual paper or the online version of it, to see if there's any information, up-to-date information you can quote to your clients as you're talking to them throughout the course of the day. That goes a long way. And so if you have a planned presentation, you're not going to be caught off guard. Yes, there may be questions that come up that you may not anticipate, but for the most part, you should be able to anticipate most of the questions that come up, because a lot of your clients are asking the same question. So again, prepare, be knowledgeable about your particular area, what's going on. Is it a buyer's market, seller's market? What's the inventory like? What is going on when it comes to offers being made? Are they coming in below, at, or above list price? To be able to communicate that effectively, and you can do that with knowledge. So again, really study up, know what's going on in your area inside out, and then be able to use that in a presentation to your client.
Let me just throw something in on that too. A lot of agents, and I've done this myself, use a pre-listing packet, and instead of going to the presentation and showing up and doing everything cold, you send over your marketing plan, you send over the contract, the listing contract, the listing agreement with the commission filled in, and you tell them, hey, I'm going to send over the contract. It's a typical contract of what we do. If you have any questions, can you just go ahead and get a highlighter and highlight those questions, and we can answer them when I arrive. So they may highlight the commission question, 6%, if you're listing at 6%. I had an experience where I did a listing for a former boss of mine who I used to work for years and years ago. And he's an investor, and he buys all kinds of properties, and he typically works with discount brokers. And I sent him over a commission. I sent him over a contract with a 6% commission, and sat down and met with him, pulled out the same contract. I asked this question. I said to him, I've sent over the contract. I've sent over my marketing plan. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about with me before we sign the listing agreement? He said, no. I said, okay, let's go ahead and sign it, because he'd already read it. Sometimes we prep ourselves for an objection that's not even going to come up. So if you can shake out the objection before you get to their house, you can come in and answer them, and not go through and answer a bunch of questions that they're not asking. So any of our other brokers, any other feedback or comments before we take questions from the audience?
Yeah, this is Steve. I just wanted to bring in and appreciate being a part of this, and excited to be back with Alice and James. One of the things that I think Jeff already alluded to, and that is, before you start answering the objections or the questions, you need to ask more questions, because you always want to try to understand the why behind the what. And many times the question being asked is not really what they're going for, and that's what Jeff was alluding to. So by asking a couple more questions, narrowing down what the real issue is, that'll help you to address it. But especially with the scenario he talked about where a client wants to write a lowball offer, sometimes you just have to come down and help them to understand the consequences of their action. I've had the conversation with clients to say, well, you need to make a decision of what's more important to you. Is it getting the best deal you can, or is it getting this home? And those sometimes many times you're not going to be able to accomplish both. And so if you want the very best deal, we're probably going to be looking at a lot of houses and making a lot of offers, and we may be able to find that. But if it's really this home that you want, you may need to be more realistic, with your approach. So sometimes giving them, both sides of it and letting them decide which is most important to them.
Thank you. Hey, Omar, you have anything to throw in the mix?
I always love the objection handling questions, but one of the things that I'd like to share mainly is the preparation part, the process of being prepared. A lot of times when we walk into a listing presentation or a buyer presentation, or when you're prospecting, as Tom had mentioned, we generally will receive the same time. That's why it's so important for us to be prepared, not just by understanding the questions, but knowing the responses through role play, practicing them beforehand, knowing how to say it, knowing when to respond, knowing what to respond to. Generally, they're going to be about the same handful. Real estate's been, the same for a long time. There's been some changes in technology and so forth, but the questions and the answers are generally going to be the same. What is your commission? Why should we hire you? You have to know your proposition. Why your unique selling proposition? Why are you the person that they should hire? Why are you the person that they should pay more money to? You have to have these answers ready to go in an elevator script, potentially just in a few minutes, and practicing them ahead of time prior to meeting with your clients with role play, with script practice, is by far the most important thing, in my opinion, rather than practicing them on your clients. So that's the most important thing that I can share, is get ahead of the game, understand exactly what you are going to say, how you're going to say it, and respond with enthusiasm and with conviction, because if they see that you're half-hearted in your response in some way, they're going to be able to read through that. Most clients are pretty savvy, and they will be able to read through that. So really just understand the objections that you're going to get, know the objections, script practice, role play, and then go out and utilize them.
That's awesome. And having people in your A list that you can go to, which should include your brokers, and that you can throw an objection at, or maybe you feel uncomfortable going on an appointment. You should not be uncomfortable with any question. You should be able to answer any question. I have people, I've got one friend I've been speaking with for probably, over 10 years about objection handling. I can call him up right now and say, hey, I've got this script I'm going to use on some prospecting I'm doing, or this objection came up, I want to role play it with you. And we instantly go into the role play mode, where we actually we don't just say, well, and role playing is not, I think I'll say this, role playing is actually saying it, like the other person is the client, they're the client and you're the agent, and so you absolutely discuss it like that. So, Tori, do we have any objections?
Excuse me, Jeff. May I just chime in here a bit?
Sure.
One thing I would like to emphasize here is something Jeff had mentioned earlier, and that is sending to your client, if you're doing a listing, a pre-listing packet. Get that packet to your client the day before you're actually doing your presentation. I'm a big advocate of that, and I can tell you that 99% of the agents that you're going to be in competition with for that listing will not do that. That will help you stand out in the eyes of that client, of the seller, that you took the time, you have an itinerary, you have all the comps supporting what you want to come in with the suggested listing price. And that goes a long way. And as Jeff mentioned, that goes a long way in answering any objections that come about. And by putting your itinerary in, that gives you an element of control in the presentation, so that if you have a strong seller, they're not going to be wandering all over asking you questions that may not go in line with what you would like to present. So by having an itinerary in that listing packet, it'll kind of cover in order what you would like to discuss and the important points of their listing that you would like to talk about. So again, I'm a big advocate of that. I highly recommend it. I know I have found that to be very successful, and agents that I'm down here responsible with and talk with and communicate with, those that use it love it. So anyway, that's all, Jeff.
Great. Do we have any? Oh, go ahead.
Jeff, I just wanted to add real quick, for each one of us, it's okay not to know something. And I think sometimes agents feel like if they don't have an answer for every question that, they're embarrassed or they feel like they're inadequate. And clients understand if you're honest with them about what you don't know, but give them the assurance that, I've got resources that I can go to get those answers for you and get back. Sometimes, people's BS meter is pretty strong. If they feel like you're just making something up because you feel like you have to have an answer, they see through that pretty quickly. So, if you're confident in your answer, and as Omar has mentioned, if you've, spent the time to prepare for it and you have that answer, that's great. But if you don't fake it. Just, take down that, understand the question, dig deep, and let them know that you will find the answer for them.
Yeah, I would agree with that with regards to some real one-off questions. The typical archetypal real estate questions that never change, we should know those. I think we should know those, like, know why you're charging 6% for your commission or that type of thing. I think you'd agree with that. But yeah, the really strange questions, like they may, you may be showing a property and they may ask you something about the neighborhood that you don't know. And it's great to be honest, and so, you can tell them, I work in a lot of different neighborhoods. And one thing I can tell you, if I don't know the answer, I know how to get it. And that's where you reach out to your brokers and also other support people that you have in your wheelhouse. So, Tori, do we have any questions, objections?
We actually have a couple. We have one that came in via Facebook, because we are live on Facebook right now. It's from Lisa, and I'm just going to read the statement that she wrote out. She wrote, "I don't want to do any repairs. I want top dollar. My house is as is. If the buyer asks for repairs, I will cancel and go to the next buyer."
Okay. So I'm going to take a stab at that and then also open it up to the brokers. The first thing I would say with an objection, like I'm not going to make any repairs, then I would basically tell them what the market's doing. I would show them the market data. If you're in a really, really fast market, that may not even be an objection. If you're in Palo Alto, walking distance from Facebook headquarters, and you have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,100 square foot house built in 1946, and it's listed at 2.8 million, you'll probably get it, believe it or not, whether the people do repairs or not. If you're in a market where houses don't sell like that, then you're going to need to be able to show what houses look like when they sell. One of the things that I've done with success is I carry in my computer bag a 25-foot long HDMI cable. And what I do is when I go on a listing appointment, I plug that cable into, most people have a flat screen TV on the wall, and I ask them if I can give you a live presentation. And I tell them this, I'm going to show you something that nobody else gets to see. This is the proprietary software that's used by real estate agents and let me show you what the houses look like that are selling for the price that you want to sell your house. And I asked them point blank, if you were shopping for your house today and it had what this house has, granite countertops, hardwood floors, new paint, new carpet, remodeled bathrooms, or it has what your house has today, which one would you pay more money for? And which one would you buy first if they were priced the same? That usually helps get them over that hurdle. You know, if they think that people are going to pay more for their house and it's in worse condition than model matches that sell that are in good condition, they're mistaken. Anybody else have any feedback on that objection?
You know, I find that the California Residential Purchase Agreement is actually a pretty nice document, and it specifically addresses that very objection. In fact, you know, one of the things they've done to accommodate our sellers that have that objection is they've now capitalized as is and the word present as in present condition. But what I try to explain to agents to help them understand it so that they can pass it on to their clients is that the contract is written in a way to allow them to get top dollar. Because if a buyer is told right up front there's no room for any requests or any repair requests, they're not going to offer their top dollar. But if the contract gives them a little bit of room to investigate and to at least ask, they're going to give you a better offer. You know, and the contract makes it clear the seller has no responsibility, no obligation to respond, even to respond to the request, much less agree to them. But by giving the buyer the opportunity to ask, they've got a much better chance of getting a better offer.
You know what? That's a really good point. And one of the things, I haven't done it recently, but I used to do it when I was more active in selling, is on my listing presentation, I would bring a copy of the purchase contract highlighted in every point of negotiation that can be negotiated between the seller and the buyer. And the reason I did that is particularly if I was dealing with somebody who was a FSBO, and I would show them there's about 60 places in this contract that a sophisticated purchaser can take advantage of your lack of experience and knowledge. And here's what they are, and here's what I'm going to do to protect you. So using the contract, good point, Steve. That's really good. Anybody else on that objection?
No, I don't have anything. I thought Steve's point was excellent.
Okay, Omar?
I think you guys got it pretty well covered. I don't know if there's anything else to add to that. I would have a similar response.
Great. And the next objection?
This one is from Cynthia. She says, recently I was interviewed by potential clients for a listing who indicated they wanted to hire me, but they had one more interview. When I did a follow-up call regarding the listing, they indicated they wanted to hire me. However, they interviewed a husband and wife team and they can get a 2-for-1, so they hired them instead. They were a retired husband and wife real estate team and they saw the value. She did not know how to respond to that.
A 2-for-1, so they got 2 agents for the price of 1.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. I've got some thoughts on that, but I want to open it up to the other brokers first and let them take a shot at it.
Yeah, I'll respond to that. One of the things that you know, a lot of agents maybe don't do initially is provide their unique selling proposition up front to the client to make it clear what they're offering versus what other agents are offering, why they should hire you. If it's in a listing presentation, the first thing that I would always want to ask is, I would like to be the last person you interview, so you know that you know, when you do hire me, you've I'm sorry, I think I cut out there. So when you do hire me, you are selecting the best agent that you can possibly hire, and you can see the difference. So that's the first thing. The second thing is handling the objection specifically to that question. Maybe that agent team is, you know, they are maybe getting a 2-for-1 in terms of that type of structure that agent has, It's also the same as going up against a team. You know, if you're an individual agent and you're up against a team that has multiple team members within that structure, how are you going to handle that objection? Well, the first thing that you have to do is you have to differentiate what you will do specifically, how hard you will work for them, and how important it is for them to understand that you're always going to be available. You always have their best interest in mind, and that you can prove your track record, whether it be through your own personal production or your office's production. Those are some of the things that I would use in terms of strategy. But just to speak to the fact of what's the benefit of using a single agent versus a team, the single agent, in my opinion, could potentially be there a lot more, has a lot more accessibility, has a lot more interest in that specific transaction than maybe a team would, because they could potentially have other transactions that they're dealing with, and they may not be able to get to that specific client as quickly or respond as quickly with the same effect that as maybe a single agent would. So that's something that I would use.
Yeah, one of the things that I would add to that is, you know, try to decode the question. They're trying to analyze what the service level is. That's the real question. So if you're going up against a team or a pair of people, that type of thing. So one of the things I would say is, you know, what I hear you saying is you're looking for the best possible service. Is that right? And get some buy-in on them and the head nodding. And then I would put it to them like this, you know, service has several components to it. You can talk about experience, you can talk about, you know, your database. One of the things I do is when I go on an appointment, I have 9,000 buyers in my database. I show that to my clients. These are the people that have raised their hand and say, I want to buy a house in the Central Valley. I have 9,000 people in my database. I list several things. You know, service has several components to it, how fast the phone is answered and all that. But one of the big components to service is motivation. And, you know, it's kind of like Walmart. When somebody goes to Walmart and they walk in and out of the store and they don't buy something, Walmart survives. The same can be true when you're dealing with a large group, a large team. They do not have the pressure or the intensity to complete a transaction on them that I do as an individual agent. So this is a very, very important business relationship for me. I want to make sure that this house closes. I want to make sure that you get top dollar, because I'm not only getting paid for my service, but I am acquiring additional customers based on my success history. And I can't just stand back and say I've got 5 people on my team and they've all done these deals. I'm building a success model here. So I cannot lose. And this is a kind of a close you want to use in many instances. I can't fail to lose on your listing. I can't fail to not get your listing sold. Whereas a larger group or a team may have the opportunity, if your listing doesn't sell, it's not going to be as impactful on them as it is on me. So I'm highly motivated. So you show the level of you show service as a component of skill and motivation. So anybody else?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add, you know, again, it goes to your overall presentation, particularly when it comes to listings. So doing that pre-listing packet I think is critical. It shows that you took the time prior to meeting with them to really look and analyze their home and the listing, and to position them in a spot where they can get the most money for their home. But also include letters of recommendation from past clients. The more you have of those, the better it shows and reflects on you and your business practices and your follow through and your dedication to your client. So again, I would suggest that you get as many letters of recommendation from past clients as you can.
Excellent. Excellent. Any other comments on that, Steve?
No, I think, you know, the key point is just your value proposition. You know, I know especially in the bigger team situations, we've got an agent in town. He's one of the best known agents in the region. But if you get into a transaction on one of his listings or in one of his deals, you'll never talk to him. You know, the only ones you talk to are his assistants. And sometimes people don't realize that getting that personal attention, like Omar was talking about, really does matter. And if you prove it by making sure that you are responsive and solid with your communication, it will show.
Great. Well, we try to keep these broker business accelerators to about 30 minutes, and we're a little bit over that. I want to thank everybody for being a part of this, all the great feedback, Omar, Steve, Tom, and Tori. We do thank you for your skillful quarterbacking of this event, and I want to wish all of you great success in your career. Next month, we will be having our webinar, and the presenter, who's next month?
Omar.
I think I am.
Yeah, it's Omar. Do you have your topic yet, Omar, to tell us about? Or you...
I'll be sharing that with Tori tomorrow. We'll have all the details for Tori tomorrow.
We'll be watching out for that. Omar always does a great presentation, so make sure you attend that, either on direct connection through our webinar software or through Facebook. And wish you all a great day.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on another great California Brokers Business Accelerator. And thank you to all our California brokers for joining us this morning and sharing your insight with us. A special thank you to Jeff Green for putting together such a wonderful presentation. I hope you guys all have a great week. Bye, everyone.